into it. Hey guys, this is Amy Cuney of Wise Living Real Estate, and I want to introduce you to Nathan Lippincott with Knockout Home Inspections. And I want to welcome you this Friday morning, and let's talk about home inspections, the time of COVID. So if you'll kind of tell us how long you've been in business, and let's just get started from there.
Well, good morning, Amy, and I really appreciate you having me on here this morning. And like you said, I'm Nathan Lippincott with Knockout Home Inspections. We do home inspections, we do fortification inspections, we do bank lender inspections. We're a 203K consultant as well now. Things are going well. COVID has affected a few things, nothing drastic. It's slowed down, maybe 10%. Last year at this time, we were doing about 60 home inspections, and we did 46 home inspections in April. So it hasn't totally killed the market. The market's still hot. The market's still moving. But that's just a little bit about it.
Yeah, we as realtors are seeing that the market dropped off drastically, like those first week or two, couple of weeks that we did the stay-at-home, we had the stay-at-home order, and then all of a sudden it's starting to tick back up. So people were pulling things off the market, but I noticed the pendings were still happening, the closings were still happening, sellers were just nervous, so inventory drastically dropped. So buyers are thinking it's a buyer's market, but it really is a seller's market because we don't have enough inventory. So as far as COVID, have y'all implemented anything online or curtailed people coming into your office or anything like that?
Thankfully, in the home inspection world, most people don't come into our office. They call, they pay with a credit card. We do have to go out to the house to do the home inspection. So we're trying to wear gloves, trying to use a lot of hand sanitizer, trying to protect the client. Normally the seller or the client is not normally there. They're more than welcome to come, but they're a little more skittish right now. So most of the time we're there by ourselves. So we're just being a little extra careful, but nothing out of the ordinary really for us on our end.
Now, I'll find from time to time that when I write a contract and I recommend several inspectors, which we're supposed to do as realtors, but where you've been involved or something, I've had the buyer want to meet you out there. Is that a service that you allow, want, not want?
Yes, I definitely allow it. I typically like to get the first hour in to get my feet wet and see what's going on and see what we're dealing with. Be there the entire 2 hours for the inspection. That is no problem at all. They're welcome to follow us around, look at everything with us, no issues. I do like them to come for at least the last 20 minutes because sometimes when they get the report, there could be 20 or 25 items on there. Nothing. Some of them are maintenance issues. Some of them are burnout light bulb. But when the homeowner receives that, the first thing they do is panic on a 20-year-old house. You're going to have a list. No matter who the inspector is, you're going to end up with a list of items. Doesn't mean it's a major concern. So I like them to be there the last 20 minutes so I can help the realtor out and say, hey, this one item is a major concern or just maintenance issues going forward.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the report you provide, it is very detailed, and there is a summary page. So as a realtor, I advise my clients to read all of it and then to look at the summaries, and what's important to them may not be important to me. So as far as advising them to remove that contingency and write up any kind of request they have, it's really not about what I think, it's about what they think. So I think that's important to point out because some things they may know the roof is 14 years old and they're going to have to replace it in the next couple of years. And that's the decision they have to make, not me. I see that. Well, tell me about what you check in a house when you go out and what you don't check in a house.
Absolutely. So we're going to get a home inspection is a visual inspection. We're not going to remove sheetrock. We're not going to remove, dressers. We're not going to remove. There's a lot of things that you can't see in an inspection. It's just part of it. You're going to have a 20 by 20 rug in the middle of the living room. You're not going to roll it up to check underneath that rug. So it's a visual inspection, but we check the roof, we check the attic, we check the crawl space, we check the plumbing, the electrical, we check all the components, and we check the entire house. To me, the two major concerns are going to be your roof and AC unit. Those are big expenses. A homeowner doesn't want to get in. Most homeowners are maxing themselves out on a loan. So they don't want to get in and find out a year later that they have to put a $20,000 roof on their house. So the roof and AC are the biggest expenses. Everything else, to me, I don't want to say is a minor concern, but except for structure. I mean, structure is definitely a major concern, but you know, that would be the quick tip of it.
Now, let's talk about stucco a second. And I've run across this situation because there was a time of a lot of stucco being done in our area. Is there a good or a bad stucco? What goes on the home inspection with that?
Absolutely. So there's two different types of stucco. There's an EIFS, which is exterior insulated foaming, you know, they call it EIFS. And that is, you know, I don't want to say it's a bad product, but if it's not installed correctly, it can be a disaster. So if there's any type of EIFS on a house, then there's the other stucco that they actually use a Durock, and it's basically concrete, and they basically build stucco right onto Durock, and that's typically fine. There is an EIFS intrusion test that people do. So if somebody comes across EIFS and they want to see, because what happens with EIFS is that moisture will soak into that foam and soak into the walls, and just stucco likes to hold moisture. So if it's not done correctly, it can be a termite issue as well. So if we see, I don't do any of that EIFS testing, but if I see any signs of it on the house or being any type of intrusion problems, I will write in there, hey, we need to go a step further with this and really look at this product. Stucco by itself, the original, the correct stuff is normally fine.
Okay, so you said the word foam. I was not going to go there, but I am going to talk about it because of new construction and homes in this area. We're in the South. We have termites. We have, you know, we're the rainiest place in the U.S. People don't realize that, even above Seattle. So let's talk about spray foam insulation and the caveats of it and the pluses and what you see out there in older homes versus new, and are people still doing it?
So, yeah, with the spray foam in the attic, it's becoming of, you know, the last 5 years it blew up. It was a big product. I did it in my house that I built 2 years ago. Your electric bill goes down to almost nothing. I mean, I built double the size of my house. Electric bill went down to nothing. A couple of issues are going to be your termite bond. I don't know all the details of it, but termites are definitely becoming an issue with foam. The second thing is, if your roof leaks, you're not going to know that your roof is leaking. So you got to do more of an annual check. You got to get up on the roof. You got to check it. You got to say, hey, because what happens is that moisture is going to sit on top of the roof and sit in that foam and allow it to just, you know, sit there and rot the wood out. So you got to be a little more proactive about it if you do have foam. And, you know, right now it's 50-50. There is a company out there that does bond a foamed house, but there's very few out there that are doing it. So but it does cut your electric bill in literally half if you do it.
Well, now they've come up with these, and I'm going into other things, but the blower door test I did, you know, on new construction, they have this type test at the end called a blower door test. It is extremely cool to watch. We built a house last year and I went down there and watched it, and it was just so cool. But to see how tight the house is, we're building them so tight. Well, what my husband does, as well as me, is we add extra insulation, the blown in kind, the batting, that kind of thing. We do see the same results, but I think it's, you know, in cooler climates, I think the spray foam does do better as far as the, you know, they don't have as many, you know, termites or water issues as we have. Crawl spaces, is that a problem with it? If you put spray foam underneath, are they doing that?
They are, and it can cause the same problems because a lot of your plumbing is ran through there. If you have a kitchen sink leak and it just sits in there, you don't know, you know, typically it falls out. Most houses don't have any insulation underneath the crawl space because it doesn't get too hot or too cold, so it just allows it to air out. And if you ever have a leak, it's just going to sit down in the crawl space. So again, any type of foam or any type of holding mechanism like that, the water can just sit in there and rot out the subfloor, basically. So
yeah.
And it's a catch-22.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of preference and what you believe and what you research. I think that you have to make that determination. I am seeing termite companies not do it, not cover it anymore. As a matter of fact, a really big one had someone recently that I had a contract on with another house. They made them exclude it. They had them sign a waiver. So that was interesting. Trying to explain that was interesting. Okay, so let's talk about, do you kind of look at the fall of the way the water drains away from the house or into the house? Do you look at that when you go out there?
Oh, absolutely. And again, it's a little tough based on when was the last time it rained. But if you see any type of landscape that's flowing towards the house, you're going to definitely recommend them to monitor it. Maybe add some gutters. A lot of these houses down here don't have gutters, and we have a lot of rain. So any type of yard that is falling towards the house, you just want to make sure that water is shedding around the house. The house could have been there for 10 years, and even though it's landscaped towards the house, maybe never had an issue. You see houses in Timber Creek have it a lot of times, and it goes around the house fine, but we do put in the report that, hey, the landscaping is falling towards the house. Recommend monitoring, maybe adding gutters, just paying attention.
Yeah, and the French drains are a good option, as well as the gutters. They now have, we installed this in our house where the gutter can actually drain into a hole in the ground, which helps it dissipate, which is a great option if you have that kind of drainage. Because when we have a gusher, it just really takes a beating on that area, and right by your foundation, it can undermine it. Okay, so we're talking about water. Let's talk about mildew versus mold. There's a huge difference. And when people see mildew, they think, oh my gosh, it's mold, it needs remediation. So what about that?
Well, one thing I think here in the South, every house has some type of level of mildew. Again, we're so hot, we're so humid. You go underneath a crawl space, you're going to see mildew. You're going to see mildew in the bathrooms. You're going to see mildew. Every house in Baldwin County is going to see mildew. When it goes from mildew to mold, that's a huge debate. But if kids are taking a shower and they don't turn on that exhaust fan or open that window, you're going to see mildew in that. You'll see in garages where they enclose that garage and never open that door. You're going to see mildew growing in that garage. I see it almost in homes. You can see some type of mildew growing there. So it's pretty typical here in the South because we have so much humidity.
Yeah. I've actually seen situations where, you'll have up by the air vents. I don't know what the situation is. I do, but share with people what you've seen around air vents, like if you have moisture condensation.
Correct.
Is that really a problem? Does it just need to be addressed? What do you do with that?
It needs to be addressed. I think any type of mildew, we can kills it, we can paint over it, we can solve it. And that AC ductwork is creating condensation due to it having a leak. At 20 degrees and your house is trying to be 70 degrees, so that sweat begins to condensate, and then it builds normally a circle around the church. You've seen 20% of the houses. It's very hard to seal that AC vent. And I think that's what some of the blower door tests are. You could probably attest more to that than I do, but they're trying to make sure that AC is not leaking into the attic to where it makes that AC vent sweat.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that. We had it done on a day where it was just totally blowing and there was a storm going by, and I was really surprised that we didn't have any air escaping, because every builder in Baldwin County will have that situation where something's a vent or whatever it is loose. You just don't know until it's tested, so you really have to watch that and see that. And also something I've noticed is behind the something we had in downtown Fairhope, where you have to check it out if you have a gas range, cooktop, whatever, and they've run the gas line behind it, not foaming around that hole, and they don't have a boot yet. So we're trying to figure out that issue, because if you put foam around it, it's a fire hazard. So you don't want to do that to make it too tight, but air can escape there. So we're struggling with finding a solution. I'm sure the home builders smarter than us, somebody is going to find a solution and market that product and make $1 million. Okay, so what are some of the questions that I get as far as buyers and sellers, but the buyers so much? Do you look at cosmetic things like paint or ugliness of lights or appliances that may have, they're getting to the end of their life? Do you advise on that, or is that something that needs to be negotiated, up front on the contract?
That's probably typically prior to the inspection. I'm not going to look at cosmetic, paint, chips. If there's a hole in the wall, I'm going to check out, hey, there's a hole in the wall. But as far as bad paint jobs or bad wallpaper, no, we're not going to report on that. That should have been addressed beforehand, saying, hey, we want the whole house repainted. One time I had a couple come to me and say, hey, I want every nail hole filled. I'm not going to have them fill every nail hole for every painting. Again, it's too much in my report. That's not what the report's about. We're looking for major concerns, safety hazards, and things like that. If the appliances are older, I'll definitely put in there, working today, but appears to be rather old. just so they know that it's something. But the color and the cosmetics of it, no, an inspector should not, in my opinion, touch.
Yeah. And okay, so appliances, you mentioned that. What appliances do you look at? Do you offer looking at other ones for a fee, or, I know certain ones are typically in a house that stay, but people from out of the area may think different. And do you check them? Does it need to be listed when you request it?
We definitely check all the appliances in the kitchen. We're going to turn on the stove. We're going to turn on the oven. We make sure that it heats up. We're not going to sit there and bake a cake and make sure it's perfectly, things like that, because you don't know if it gets too hot or if it takes longer or this. But if it heats up, it does its job. But the appliances in the kitchen are included in the inspection. Typically, we don't know if the washer or dryer is staying or a deep freeze is staying. We normally stay away from it. If somebody asks me to check it, I'm there already. I don't normally add an extra fee. Hey, I'm here. It takes me 2 minutes to turn on the washer and dryer. And, again, same thing. It's hard to test a dryer and say, hey, it's going to dry in 48 minutes.
Right.
Hey, it's going to dry in 60 minutes. So you don't know if it's, you can make sure it's kicking on and doing its job, but you don't know until you really move into the house, to be honest.
Yeah, and most things that are attached in the kitchen, except for the refrigerator, typically convey in houses. I know new construction, we don't put refrigerators in houses. A lot of people just don't realize that coming in from out of town. But whenever a refrigerator is left with a house or washer dryer, I always tell people you might want to think about a warranty, negotiate a warranty on that if you've negotiated that, those things, so you can have a little bit of peace of mind as far as that's concerned. Gold fortification. I want to talk about this with new construction and existing homes. What are the benefits of it? How it's changed through the years? So tell me your perspective on that.
Yeah, there's 3 different levels to the gold, to the fortified world. There's fortified roof, there's silver, and there's gold. Fortified roof you can pretty much do on any older home. When you re-roof it, our codes are to that standard. So if you just hire an evaluator, get them involved, you can have a fortified roof. Pretty much all new construction, there's still maybe 20 or 30% out there that are not building to that gold standard. But I think 70 to 80%, and you may know more than I do, but I think most people are building to that gold standard here in Baldwin County now.
Yeah, we can't sell a house without gold at all. I mean, because the insurance savings, it's enough to warrant and resale value if they sell it, it's gold fortified, but it does give them peace of mind. It does have the insurance savings. The house is stronger. And so we're finding that people don't want to not have that in their house. So it's kind of a no-brainer for us, but we weren't doing it a couple of years when it came out because insurance wasn't, the
Right.
savings weren't there. So, but there is a cost to the builder. I don't think people realize there's a cost that's included for the inspector to come out in the different stages and make sure that it's right. There is a cost.
Yes, yes, there's definitely a fee, and most evaluators are around that $1,000 range for a gold fortified home. Like you said, the builder's paying that. The builder's including that in the package deal. Even when you re-roof a house, we charge $400 to do a fortified roof. We come out, make sure they do everything to the standard, take pictures, document it. There's a fee to us to submit these things. I know people think, oh, you're making $400. I have to pay IBHS every time I submit one of these. So we have to make our money, and then we hand the certificates to the homeowner. Like you said, that certificate helps them lower their insurance. It'll definitely increase the value of the house. It's going to help sell your house faster.
Right.
And then it brings you the peace of mind as well, because you have a more resilient home.
Okay, so tell us basically the difference in the level, because I know I understand it, but starting from the foundation, the gold, silver, the
Sure.
all of that, the bronze, from foundation to walls to house. Tell us about that. Which one's which level?
Yep, and you got to start with the roof first, and to get silver, you have to have roof, and to have gold, you have to have all 3. So roof is having a sealed roof deck. They want to have, there's a couple different methods to it. You can do 4-inch tape with felt. You can do a peel and stick. So when you re-roof a house, we can get you to the fortified roof level. When people build a new house, they do the sealed roof deck, they're there. Silver then comes to the next level, which has to have all impact protection on all your windows and doors. And each level has multiple ways to do it. To obtain it, you can do fabric shield, you can do metal panel coverings, you can do impact rated windows. There's all these kind of different options that we can do to get you to that silver designation. And then the porch trap. With gold, we do have to have an engineer involved. We have to have a load path. You've seen it, but they put thousands of straps in these houses now. They strap that rafter to the wall to the concrete. Again, there's multiple methods to it depending on which engineer you use. You can go with go bolts. You can go with strong ties. You can go with regular straps. Recently, they've started using structural screws. They have 8-inch structural screws that you can almost get away with no straps whatsoever. And it goes back to the engineer, and the engineer signs on a form saying, hey, we built it as standard. The builder signs a form saying we did it to that engineer's specs. And the evaluator says, hey, I have all the pictures to prove that these 3 things are done.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting you talk about that, and I want to touch on that. In new construction, when we're designing homes, and we design everyone individually, we have a designer, and then we have an engineer, and then there's also the architect. You can have an architect, but we choose the designer and engineering. Do you have to have your home engineered for this area, and do you have to hire an engineer if you use an architect instead of a designer? Do you know?
So for gold, you have to have an engineer always. To get the gold fortified, you have to have an engineer. Based on the city that you're building in, it depends on whether you need an engineer or not, But to get to fortified, we do have to have an engineer involved.
Right.
If you're in Fairhope, they require an engineer. I think Foley requires an engineer. So we're getting to the point where everybody requires this engineer anyways. So why not go to the gold standard? We can get you to silver without an engineer, but if you want gold, we do have to have an engineer involved, yes.
Right, right. And that's a good point, because you're paying for your designer to design it, which typically is less. I love architects, and they're great, and we have a lot of great ones around here, but you're going to pay the designer a little less, and you're still going to have to pay the engineer. You're going to have to pay that architecture, and it's just a matter of preference on houses and how you feel with them. I tell people all the time, and I don't think agents realize this, and I don't think homeowners realize this, you need to not buy a plan on the internet without talking to a builder, because it has to be drawn for this area, And we have had someone and people spend $25,000 on a house they cannot build. And it just breaks my heart, and they just don't understand it when they bring these plans in, and they're from whoever online. That's fine and everything, but then it has to be redrawn here and engineered, and it's so frustrating for me to say, you need to do your homework first. And please, I know it sounded like a great deal, but they've gone back 3 times, 4 times, and still can't build the house. And we actually have had some people that have gone back and had it redone with that same company online, and just don't get that it's got to be re-engineered. They're going to spend another amount of money to get this done. So that's an interesting one on that. That actually is a deal killer on people building houses, because they've already dropped a chunk before it even was a true cost of the house. Is there anything else that a home buyer should know prior to? I know home sellers, I've heard you say before, do the basic maintenance things before you go to sell your home. If it's obvious, just regular maintenance, do it. But anything the home buyer should be looking for other than the HVAC and the roof? Is plumbing important? Is electrical as equally important as the HVAC?
Yeah, there's going to be some safety hazards in the electrical that we're going to point out. And as long as there's nothing major concerns of safety hazards, we're definitely going to pay. Aluminum wiring back in the 70s is an absolute insurance. Excuse me. So you want to check that out, especially in plumbing. There's 2 products in plumbing. One is called polybutylene, and one is called Durapex. And I do not allow any of my inspectors to leave that house until we can prove what kind of plumbing is in that house. Polybutylene was from the 1990s, probably about 2000, 2002. And then they came out with the Durapex maybe 2000 to 2007. And they're both, not the greatest product in the world. So you just want to be able to let the homeowner know, the home buyer know about it when they're buying that house.
Yeah, we actually had built our personal homes, and, no one knew at the time these were bad runs, and it was all over Baldwin County, actually probably the entire U.S. where we had this product and we were having some issues. And actually in our house, it rained a couple of times. It burst, and they just have weak spots. My husband pretty much uses the other today, but we've actually had people do copper throughout the house, which is extremely expensive. I love copper, but it is extremely expensive. And you also have theft on new construction sites. So the first thing they go for is, your lumber, but then they also go for your copper, and then they go for your appliances. That's always fun. Is there anything else you can share with us that we need to know as realtors or as somebody looking to buy a home?
Absolutely. And one thing, two things. One is that fortification, certificate is good for 5 years. So always know that there is a limit to it. You do need to renew it. We do not charge that full $400 or $1,000. It's going to be a $150 fee to renew that certificate. They want to make sure that the roof's still in decent shape, and then that can be fortified. So
okay, hang on.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you on that. So on the gold fortified, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's done every 5 years, and you don't charge as much, but it has to be re-inspected to get that gold certificate to keep that insurance savings. Building one to a house, what does that do?
So if you ever add an addition, you want to call an evaluator. You want to just make sure that it's still built to that same standard, because a lot of people are throwing a porch on without pulling permits. A lot of people we all do it. We're all blamed for it. We want to not pay the city their $500, so we're going to throw a back porch on. We're going to throw, again, get the evaluator involved. I don't care if you ignore the city. Get the evaluator involved to make sure you don't ruin your certificate for the entire house because you didn't build that to the certain standard. So
yeah.
So then the other thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say people just don't know it, and they don't know that they need to renew it. And also as agents, I'm going to toss this out there. My husband and I, before we were building to gold, right when it came out, we did not do gold fortification on the house. But then we started doing it once the insurance savings justified it. So we had an agent who had relisted the house, and the sellers went to sell, and they told the agent it was gold fortified, and it was not. And they didn't provide the agent with a certificate, and that became, and she checked the box on the MLS system, and that was a big issue in the contract. I know the buyers were upset because it wasn't gold fortified, and they didn't want, they couldn't spend the money to do what they needed to do to get the insurance savings they needed. So that was a biggie. So what's the second thing? You had said that there's something else, I'm sure.
Yeah, you took half of it right there saying that statement. So again, as a buyer, you want to make sure the house is fortified. As the real estate agent listing or buying, you want to make sure that it's fortified. Again, this has fallen into my lap 4 or 5 times. Like you just said, that house specifically, I was able to get that house to a silver designation, so it sort of settled itself out. But you've got.
Oh, so you were the one that helped that. Is that correct?
I was involved in that. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I didn't know that. I just found that out. That's interesting.
So yeah, I was able to get that house to silver. And that's another thing. If you have built a house in the last 3 or 4 years and don't have a certificate, again, we will do all the legwork and try to prove that you can get some type of designation. It's a lot harder, it's a lot trickier, but it is possible. But if you're not sure if a house is fortified, call Knockout and say, hey, I'm about to list this house. The sellers say it's fortified. What can you do? I'm a buyer. I'm looking at buying this house. They're telling me it's fortified. Either have proof of that certificate or call Knockout or call someone to prove that it has a certificate.
Yeah, you definitely want to do that. I mean, you just kind of want to back up what the homeowners are saying, because that's a liability issue. I mean, a huge liability issue, and especially if the seller's trusting the agent to do the research, the listing agent, and the buyer's trusting the buyer's agent to make sure they've got it. Huge liability on realtors. They need to do their due diligence and work. I'm trying to think of anything else that can come up in home inspections. But by the way, any of these things that we've mentioned can make a contract fall apart, just depending on how the buyer feels, the seller feels, whether or not they can come together on anything. So it can just fall apart over one simple thing as the paint, but it can also fall apart about a toilet wobbling. So, that's interesting. So anything else you want to share? This has been very enlightening, and I learned, I always learn several things when I talk to you. So anything else we need to know about? Nope, you got it.
I think we went through everything.
Yeah, your job is really hard. I would not want your job. Okay, so tell people how they can get in touch with you. And you're located in Fairhope, but also one other thing before that, what's your approximate range of price for inspections? I know that's a loaded question.
Absolutely. It's normally $300 to $500 is whatever house you buy should be in that range. Anything 1,500 square feet and under is $300. And then we go up normally $50 per 500 square feet. So that can give you a quick range. The typical range is $300 to $500. We do service Baldwin and Mobile County. We go pretty far. We go to Atmore, we go to Bay Minette. So we go pretty far. We're happy to, serve wherever we can serve. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Awesome. I have one other question. Sellers, yeah, I just thought of this a second ago. Do you do a lot of inspections for sellers before? Because as an agent, I love to have inspectors involved. I don't think inspectors like to do inspections so much for sellers.
Right.
But what's your thoughts on that?
And a lot of people call that a pre-listing inspection. I'm not a big fan of them. I am happy to come out and do a walkthrough for 15, 20 minutes, look at the roof and look at the AC and tell them, hey, you need to fix this moisture issue. You need to fix that issue. Because it depends on which inspector comes in. If I go in and do a full home inspection, you give that homeowner 20 items to repair and they fix those 20 items, well, it's a 90% chance that the buyers are going to hire another inspector and they're going to find 20 items. Well, now it becomes people are upset, this, that, the other. You don't know which items to fix. You don't know. So again, it becomes a little game. So I say, like I said, I am thrilled and happy to come out. If a seller has some questions, let me talk to them for 20, 30 minutes, solve their concerns. I sort of just include that just to my realtors and things like that. So I'm happy to do a walkthrough for 20 or 30 minutes and talk to them a little bit. And then when the buyers come in and do the inspection, they may not even ask for 20 items. We may fix items that we're concerned with and the buyers could care less. So like you said earlier, you don't know what buyers feel. You don't know. Each buyer I get, they're concerned about one item and one item only. They could have had a house fire from wiring. They could have had, so they get pre-listing inspection to me doesn't really help personally.
Well, and one other thing I wanted to mention, you made me think of this. Caveat emptor. Alabama is a caveat emptor state, and so that's buyer beware. It is up to the buyer. If your agent is representing you, it puts a little bit of that liability back on the agent to make sure the due diligence is done. But truly, caveat emptor means the buyer needs to make sure they're totally happy with the house. They've done any inspections, they've done their due diligence to be happy with the house, the representation, what's been told by the seller. So it's up to them to find any issues that is going to concern them. So as an agent, when you're becoming a buyer's agent, just a little educational thing. I didn't realize when I first got my license, you become kind of the go-to for resources. You put some liability on yourself. So talk about that with your buyer, because the buyer truly is the one that knows what's important to them. They may not share with you something, and then they come back later, well, you should have known this, you should have shared it. So it's very important to talk about that thing. So anyway, I'm sorry. I always think of things with you. You're just so knowledgeable. I thank you for coming in today. This was awesome. We did a video earlier in the week and it was storming here and we had no internet connection. It was terrible, but I appreciate it. And anybody that wants to call in, what number can they reach you at?
Best number to reach me at or the office is 251-517-4558.
And your website?
We have two websites. We have koinspections.com and then we have fortifiedhome.com. So again, if you're looking for an inspection or a fortification, we're happy to help you in any way that we can. So we're here.
That's awesome. Nathan, I appreciate it. And I am sure I'll be talking with you very soon. And you have an awesome, awesome day.
Thank you so much, Amy.
All right.